My name is Leah Morgan. I'm 32 years old, and until last night, I thought I was getting married to the love of my life. Now I'm sitting on my couch, surrounded by half-eaten snacks, shattered trust, and the faint echo of laughter that still makes my chest ache. It was supposed to be our engagement party, a small cozy celebration in my apartment. 15 people, mostly Mark's friends, all talking over one another, all loud, in the way that made me feel like a guest in my own home. Mark called it intimate. I called it cheap. But I didn't argue. I thought compromise was part of love until I realized I was the only one compromising. The ring had been a running joke between us, hammered silver cubic zirconia, exactly $100. It's so us, Mark said when we bought it. We'll laugh about this one day. I'm not laughing. The air felt wrong that night. Mark was glowing, floating around the room like he was hosting his own birthday, not celebrating us. Every time I walked toward him, he drifted away, refilling someone's glass, laughing with the guys, or whispering something to Ella, his so-called college best friend. I'd raised concerns before, but he brushed them off. She's like a sister, he said. Right. Sisters don't text at midnight or touch your fiancé's tie like that. When his friend Zane stood up for a toast, I felt my stomach tighten. He was already drunk, grinning too wide, glass raised. To Mark and Leah, he said, slurring slightly, "Two people who prove love can survive anything." Even Mark's backup bride laughter erupted awkward, sharp, like glass breaking. Mark's face froze. "Zane, don't." But Zane kept going, turning toward Ella with a wink. "Come on, Ella. You've always said if Leah ever messes up, you'll be ready on the bench, right?" The room went silent. My eyes darted to Mark. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her. And she was smiling, tiny, embarrassed maybe, but pleased. That smile hit me harder than any slap could. Someone coughed. Someone else laughed nervously. Mark said nothing. Absolutely nothing. I stood up. My chair scraped the floor like a gunshot. "Wow," I said softly. "A backup bride? That's practical." Zane blinked, realizing too late that he'd stepped on a landmine. "Leah, it's just a..." I cut him off. No, it's brilliant. Contingency planning. Risk management, right, Mark?" He frowned. "Leah, don't start." "Start." I smiled. It felt sharp on my face. "You're right. I should finish instead." I walked to the coat rack, pulled down my jacket, and reached into the pocket. My fingers brushed against the small velvet box I'd put there earlier, the one holding that cheap silver ring. When I turned around, everyone was watching me. The laughter had died completely. I walked straight to Ella. She looked up, eyes wide glass, trembling in her hand. I opened the box. The ring glinted weakly under the light. "Tag in, sweetheart," I said, my voice calm. "He's all yours." And I dropped the box into her hand. Mark stood abruptly. "Leah, what the hell are you doing?" Ending the joke before it gets any less funny. Nobody moved. The air felt heavy, thick with humiliation and pity. Then I forced a laugh, loud, brittle, hollow. "Don't stop the party on my account. Keep celebrating your little backup plan." Zane muttered, "Leah, come on." But I was already walking to the door. "Party's over," I said, opening it wide. "Everyone out." Mark's voice cracked behind me. "You're being insane." "Maybe," I said without turning, "but at least I'm not auditioning replacements." He froze, color draining from his face. The others began to shuffle toward the exit, eyes averted. Ella was pale, clutching the little velvet box like it might burn her. When the door finally shut, the silence felt like a physical thing pressing against my skin. The fairy lights Mark had insisted on still glowed, faintly mocking in their warmth. I sat down on the couch, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and half-empty glasses. On the coffee table lay the ring box. She must have dropped it before running out. I picked it up and stared at the dull silver circle inside. After a long minute, I whispered almost to myself, "Best $100 I ever spent." The pounding started 10 minutes after I locked the door. Mark's voice cut through the hallway, angry and slurred. "Leah, open the damn door." "You embarrassed me in front of everyone behind him." Zane, and Kyle were shouting too, a chorus of drunken indignation. "You owe him an apology. You went too far." I didn't answer. I just slipped on my noise-canceling headphones, opened a new playlist, and let their voices fade beneath the music. They kept at it for 20 minutes, maybe more, yelling, cursing, calling me crazy. Then I heard Zane mutter something like, "She's calling the cops," and the hallway finally went quiet. I didn't actually call them that night. I just pretended. It worked. The next morning, my phone looked like a bomb site. Over 100 notifications, texts, missed calls, voice messages, all from Mark Ella or their little circle of defenders. Mark's first few messages were angry. How could you humiliate me like that? It was a joke. You have serious trust issues. Then came the guilt tripping. You're throwing away 4 years. I can't believe you'd ruin something good. My mom's horrified. She says you need help. The last one read, I'm staying at Ella's for now. You happy I blocked his number? Then I blocked Ella's. Then Zane's, Kyle's, even his mother's. Every single one of them. Silence. It felt foreign, but good. By 8 a.m., a locksmith arrived. I stood by the door while he changed every lock, installed a high-security bolt, and handed me new keys. $280, worth every cent. When he left, I looked around the apartment, the half-empty glasses, the wilted roses, the trail of party confetti across the floor. It didn't look like home anymore. It looked like evidence. I grabbed a stack of boxes and started packing. His shirts first still smelling faintly like his cologne, then his toiletries, his cufflinks, his shoes, his stupid weighted blanket. Every item went into a labeled box: clothes, toiletries, miscellaneous lies. When I found one of his old birthday cards signed "To My Forever," I laughed out loud, short and bitter. I'd been so sure I was the lucky one. I thought he was the steady one, the man who'd never lie, never cheat, never make me feel small. Instead, I'd been living beside a stranger who practiced pretending to love me. By afternoon, 12 boxes lined the wall near the entryway. Every trace of him contained categorized and ready to leave my life. I took one last walk around the apartment just to be sure I hadn't missed anything. That's when I found the photo. It was on his desk, Mark and Ella arms around each other at some college event, laughing like they shared a secret. I slipped it into the last box, closed the lid, and taped it shut. Done. The knock came just as the tape clicked, hard, impatient. I checked the peephole Mark. Alone this time. His expression was stormy. I opened the door, just an inch, keeping the chain on. What do you want? I asked. His voice was tight with anger. My key doesn't work. I know, I said. I changed the locks. His jaw dropped. You what? You can't do that, Leah. This is my home, too. I met his glare evenly. No, it's my apartment. Your name's not on the lease. You were a guest. His nostrils flared. A guest. I lived here for 2 years. You lived with me. That's not the same thing. He shoved at the door, chain rattling. I'm getting my stuff. You can schedule a pickup. Everything's boxed in the entryway. You'll have 30 minutes. He laughed bitterly. You think you can dictate terms? You're unbelievable. I kept my tone flat. You can take your clothes, your personal things, and the bookshelf. The chair stays. What chair? The ergonomic one you begged me to buy for your work-from-home setup. The one I paid $700 for on my card. You said you'd pay me back. He blinked, then sneered. You're keeping it. That's theft. It's payment, I said. You didn't pay me back, so now it's mine. He stepped closer to the door, face twisting. That's extortion, Leah. You're insane. I'll call the cops. I'll tell them you're stealing my property. Go ahead, I said calmly. Bring them the lease and the receipt. Maybe tell them about your backup bride while you're at it. For a second he froze. His mouth opened, then shut again. The rage in his eyes shifted to something else, fear. You'll regret this, he muttered. Maybe, I said, and closed the door in his face. The silence afterward felt heavier than the noise had. I leaned against the door, listening as his footsteps faded down the hall. Then I slid the deadbolt shut and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was completely alone. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. 2 days later, there was another knock. But this time it wasn't Mark's angry pounding. It was deliberate, rhythmic. When I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. 2 uniformed police officers stood outside, and behind them, parked at the curb like he was proud of it was Mark. And of course, Ella was with him, leaning against the car, pretending she wasn't part of the show. I opened the door halfway, keeping my voice even. Good morning, officers. The older one nodded politely. Miss Morgan, we received a call about a domestic dispute and a possible unlawful eviction. His tone was tired, like he'd done this 100 times already today. I glanced past him toward Mark and raised an eyebrow. Let me guess who called. The younger officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, if he lived here and you locked him out, that could be considered an illegal eviction. I smiled. Small, polite, dangerous. I completely understand, which is why I have my lease right here. I handed it over. Only my name, my address, my signature, not his. He was never on it, I said. He has no bills sent here, no mail, no tenancy rights. He was a guest who was asked to leave. The older officer scanned it quickly, then nodded to his partner. Seems clear to me. Mark, who had been hovering behind them, stepped forward. She's lying. Half that furniture's mine. My work chair. My equipment. She's holding it hostage. His voice cracked at the end, betraying the panic beneath the anger. She can have everything that belongs to her, I said calmly, gesturing toward the entryway. 14 boxes. His clothes. Toiletries, personal items. All labeled. He can take them now under supervision if he wants. The older officer rubbed his temple clearly over it. Sir, is the chair disputed? Mark's face went red. Yes, it's worth $700. I reached behind me, grabbed the printed receipt from the side table, and handed it to the officer. Bought on my credit card. He said he'd pay me back. He didn't. That makes it mine until reimbursed. The officer stared at the receipt, then looked back at Mark. Sir, this looks like a civil matter. We can't force her to give you the chair. He turned to me. Are you okay with him collecting the rest of his property while we're here? Absolutely, I said. And so the strangest scene of my life unfolded. 2 police officers stood in my doorway while Mark walked in and out, box by box, lugging the pieces of his old life out of mine. The air was so thick with tension I could hear every breath. Ella stayed by the car, arms folded, pretending she wasn't watching. Each time Mark walked past me, he muttered something under his breath, cold, vindictive, heartless. I ignored him. The older officer stood with his arms crossed, expression unreadable. The younger one looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. When Mark picked up the last box, he glared at me. You could have just talked to me like an adult. I met his eyes. I did. You just didn't like what you heard. He looked like he wanted to throw the box at me, but instead he shoved it against his hip and stormed down the hall. Ella climbed into the car before he even reached it. He turned back one last time. This isn't over, Leah. You'll see. I closed the door slowly and locked it again. I already have, I whispered. The officers gave me a small nod before leaving. The moment their footsteps faded, I collapsed onto the couch. My hands were shaking, though I hadn't realized it until then. I wasn't scared, just exhausted. Every part of me ached from holding it together. I wanted to cry, but nothing came. Just this cold, strange calm. For the first time, I thought it might finally be over. I was wrong. The next morning, my landlord, Maria, called. Hey, Leah, she said carefully. Just checking in everything. Okay over there? Yeah, I said slowly. Why? Well, it's weird. I got 2 anonymous calls today. One about constant screaming and arguments coming from your unit. Another about a chemical smell from your vents. Sound familiar? My blood ran cold. Anonymous. Yeah. Probably some petty neighbor thing, but the corporate office freaked out. They're asking me to schedule a wellness inspection next week. And, if we get one more call, they'll consider it a community safety violation. I stared at the wall, heart pounding. Maria, this is Mark. It has to be. She sighed. I figured. You've always been a perfect tenant, Leah, but please, whatever this is, make it stop. I don't want to lose you. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. No tears, no panic, just realization. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was war. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment made me think of Mark, his smirk, his arrogance, his promise that it wasn't over. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, then made coffee strong enough to burn my throat. The idea of him trying to poison my peace with lies made my hands tremble, not from fear, but fury. He couldn't stand that I wasn't crawling back. He needed chaos to feel powerful again. At 9 a.m., I called a lawyer. His name was David Tran, calm voice, sharp mind. I explained everything, the engagement, the party, the breakup, the police visit, and now the anonymous calls to my landlord. He didn't interrupt, just listened, scribbling notes. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he said, "This is classic vindictive ex behavior. You've already done the smart things, changed the locks, documented everything, stayed calm. Now you need a paper trail to protect yourself." He drafted a cease and desist letter that same afternoon, formal, direct, and terrifyingly efficient. It detailed the false police report, the harassment, and the anonymous defamatory calls. It warned that any further contact, direct or indirect, would be treated as evidence in a civil lawsuit for harassment and defamation. He said he'd send copies via certified mail to Mark's address, Ella's, and even Zane's, since all three had been involved that night. It cost me $350 for the consultation and service. When I handed over my card, David gave me a look halfway between empathy and admiration. He'll back off once he realizes you're not afraid, he said. People like that thrive on reaction. You're doing the right thing by staying silent and formal. Let the paper talk. By evening, I'd typed up my own email to Maria, my landlord. I summarized everything attached the cease and desist letter and copied her corporate office. I made it clear that the anonymous complaints were part of an ongoing harassment campaign by my ex-fiancé who was retaliating after being removed from my residence. It wasn't an emotional message. It was clean, precise, professional. The kind of email that screams I have evidence. After hitting send, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. Days passed. No calls from Maria. No texts. No knocks. The silence was heavy, but it was peace. I started cleaning again, playing music, opening the windows. The air felt lighter. I even started sleeping through the night. For a while, I believed that maybe the nightmare was finally done. Then a week later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Ella." My stomach clenched. I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity won. The message continued. "I'm out. He's crazy. He wanted me to call your landlord again, say I saw drugs in your apartment. I'm done being part of this. I'm sorry for everything." I read it twice, then put my phone face down on the table. I didn't reply. Her guilt didn't interest me. I just took a screenshot for documentation and archived it. That's all it was, now evidence. The next morning, I got another call. Unknown number again. I debated letting it ring, but something told me to answer. "Hello," I said cautiously. A familiar voice came through the line. Older, smooth, practiced. "Leah, it's Henry Mark's father." Of course it was. I almost laughed. "Mr. Lewis," I said evenly. "What can I do for you?" He sighed, the kind of sigh meant to sound disappointed but compassionate. "Leah, I know things ended badly. I'm not calling to lecture you. It's just, Mark isn't doing well. He's been under a lot of stress. He hurt his back and can't work comfortably. He mentioned you still have his ergonomic chair, the one that helps him sit without pain." My eyes closed. Of course. The chair. The symbol of everything he thought he was owed. "I see," I said. "And he sent you to negotiate." Henry chuckled softly. "He didn't send me, sweetheart. I'm just trying to help both of you move on peacefully." I stayed quiet. He filled the silence, as men like him always do. He said, "You're keeping it out of spite." I told him, "That doesn't sound like you. You're reasonable. How much would it take for you to let it go?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. $700, I said flatly. "That's what I paid for it on my card. Once I'm reimbursed, I'll leave it outside for pickup." There was a pause. Then incredulously, $700. For a used chair. "It's the price he agreed to," I said, "and the price that kept me from back pain while he texted other women. Seems fair." A long exhale. "Fine. Can I Venmo you?" I blinked. "Yes, you can." Not even a minute later, the notification pinged. "Henry Lewis paid you $700 for chair." I rolled the chair out onto the porch, texted him, "It's ready," and went back inside. An hour later, a car pulled up. Mark climbed out, moving stiffly, avoiding the windows. He shoved the chair into the back seat, slammed the door, and sped off. He never looked up. I didn't either. When the taillights disappeared, I laughed for the first time in weeks, a small, private sound that almost felt foreign. He'd finally paid me to disappear from his life, and I was more than happy to oblige. After Mark drove off with the chair, the silence in my apartment felt different, heavier at first, but not suffocating. It was a silence I could breathe in. No more banging on the door. No more vibrating phone with his name flashing across the screen. No more pretending I was the one losing control. For the first time, peace wasn't a luxury. It was a choice I'd finally made for myself. A few days later, Maria called. Her tone was lighter this time. "Hey, Leah? Just wanted to let you know the corporate office reviewed everything. We're closing the complaint file. I saw your lawyer's letter, nicely done. You're in the clear." I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thank you, Maria. Really." "No problem," she said. "And for what it's worth, I always knew it was him. You've been a model tenant for years." That simple validation made my chest tighten. I didn't cry, but something inside me unclenched. The fear was gone. The war was over. A week passed, then another. No calls, no letters, no sightings. Just quiet. I started doing normal things again, watering my plants, going to work, cooking dinners. I actually ate instead of just staring at. Every night the apartment looked less like a battleground and more like mine again. Then one evening, I got another text from an unknown number. My stomach sank, but when I opened it, it wasn't what I expected. It was from Zane, the same idiot who'd made the backup bride joke that night. "Leah," it read, "I know I was out of line. I didn't know how bad things were between you and Mark. I'm sorry for the toast. I thought it was just a joke." I stared at the message for a long moment. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. Either way, it didn't matter. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even bitter. I just didn't care. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, filed it away with the rest, and deleted the message. Later that week, another text appeared. This one from a mutual friend, Amy, someone I hadn't heard from in months. "Just wanted you to know, Mark and Ella broke up. Apparently he tried blaming her for everything, said her stupid friend group ruined his life. She moved out of his place last month. They're not speaking." I stared at my screen and let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course he blamed someone else. It was always someone else. Responsibility was a language Mark never bothered to learn. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine and watched the streetlights shimmer on the rain-soaked pavement. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about him or Ella or anyone else. Just me. My quiet apartment, my reflection in the window, tired but still standing. Still here. Then my phone buzzed one last time. A Venmo notification. $700 received from Henry Lewis. For chair. I smiled faintly, whispering to myself, worth every penny. I turned off my phone, closed the curtains, and stood in the center of my apartment. It looked cleaner now, lighter somehow. No boxes, no ghosts, just space. I thought about the ring, the $100 joke that had started all of this. I found it still sitting in that cheap velvet box on the counter. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, watched it catch the dim kitchen light. For a second, I almost felt sad. Then I slipped on my coat, walked down to the mall, and dropped it in the donate old jewelry bin near the escalators. "Someone else can laugh about it," I murmured. "Someone who still believes." When I got home, the apartment was dark, but it didn't feel empty. It felt mine. I poured another glass of wine and sank into the couch, the same spot where this whole thing had started. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, low and far away, like an echo of everything I'd already survived. I wasn't angry anymore, not hurt,